For this configuration example, we will be measuring plants across a forest transect. The idea is that you would draw a transect through a section of forest, and at several points along the transect, we would stop and measure different species that are touching the transect line. So for this example, we will assume that we will be doing several transects. We'll be measuring at each measuring point. We'll be stopping and we'll be measuring several different species that are touching the transect line, and then we'll measure 3 different leaves from each of those species. So this is how we will proceed in setting up the software for this configuration example. We're now ready to discuss configuring your LA6400 software. In light of the experiment that we are going to be conducting, the ecological survey, doing transects through a forest, let's go and set up our software now. Most of the configuration settings are in the configuration menu, F2. If you've used the 6400 previous versions of the software, you'll notice the configuration menu now looks a little bit different. If you wanted to open a new configuration, if you were trying to install a new chamber, for instance, you could select the New option. If you'd already stored a configuration and you wanted to open it and perhaps make some changes, you could go and select the Open option. If you had made changes, you would notice a little asterisk down next to the last line in this menu, and then you would be able to save those settings to a new file name. For now, we are just going to edit our current file, so go ahead and go down to the very bottom, and you can either press select or enter. Either one of those conducts the function. Once your configuration is open, we can go in and check our settings. The first thing we want to do is make sure that we have the software set up for the appropriate chamber. Now for this experiment, we will be using our red-blue light source, so we want to change our line selector tool and move it to highlight light. Once you've done that, go ahead and press the F1 key to expand that menu, and you'll see currently in the factory default configuration, the light source is set to sun and sky, meaning we'll be using our clear chamber. Because we will be using the red-blue light source, we do want to change that. So again, if you move the line selector tool down to source and press F2 edit, it will bring up a window allowing you to select a different option. Now the options that come up in the window are a reflection of what was installed when you bought your instrument, or what a factory setting would be. Go ahead and go up and select the 6400 O2 LED source and press enter. Once you have done that, it will bring up a menu showing you a list of possible light sources. Now this list is from going back to when your instrument was purchased. If you always use the same light source with this instrument, you'll probably only have one option in this list. Here at Lycor, we interchange our light sources with our instruments, and that's why I have a number of options here when this window comes up. I'll be using the very first one, our newest light source. I will highlight that, and you can either press select, F5, or you can press the enter key. And now you'll see that my source has been changed. Rather than saying sun and sky, it reflects we will be using the O2 LED light source. And now notice the asterisk that appears next to source. That indicates I have changed my source, and if you follow those asterisks up, you can see I have changed my factory default configuration. We'll be storing those changes when we're completely finished with the configuration. For now, we can go ahead and contract the light menu. The next thing we want to do is go and set up our prompts. Because we will be doing measurements along transects within a forest canopy, we want to make sure that we have prompts set up that allow us to enter important information as we collect the data. Some of that important information would be what transect we're working on. Another would be what species we're measuring. Another would be what leaf number. Perhaps you're going to measure 3 or 4 leaves on one particular plant, and any other information that will be useful. So in order to do that, go down to the prompts menu, move your line selector tool down to that, and then you can expand that menu by pressing the F1 key. The first item there is prompts on log equals off. And what this does is it automatically will turn your prompts either on log, or if you press that, it will turn that function key on or off. And this is always good if you're doing survey measurements to have your prompts on log set to on. That way when you go into new measurements, you don't have to remember to go turn on that particular key. And now what will happen is every time I press the log key, my prompt list will automatically come up. If you are doing another type of experiment, say a light response curve, then you wouldn't want the prompts on log to be turned on. You would be prompted for all of this information at every single light level. But since you do a light curve on just one leaf, there's no reason to enter all that information every time a data point is logged. But for survey measurements, we'll be taking in each time we log, we are on a new leaf, so we need to enter all that information. So that's why it's good to keep that on log set to on for a survey measurement. Okay, we're ready to set up our prompts. So go down to where it says items equals default none, and go ahead and edit that, F2, and it will bring you into a separate menu. And now we're ready to insert several prompts. The first one we want to insert is what our transect number is. So go ahead and choose the very first item in the user-defined list, which is -101. And we are going to change this label. So if you highlight that and say Edit, instead of calling it Auxiliary 1, we're going to use our Delete Line button here, F1, to get rid of all of that information. And now we'll go ahead and type in the word transect. So this is the label that will come up when we are asked a question. The description, you can enter information if you would like. The description information is used whenever a complete list of all of the variables are displayed. For instance, there's a key in new measurements called what's what, and if you press that key, the label and the description for every parameter in the instrument comes up. So that would be when this particular information would come up. And then you can decide what type of prompt it will be. Since transect is probably going to be a number, I'm going to leave this set as numeric. But if you press the edit key, you'll see that you can also set the information to be a string as well. We'll go ahead and keep it numeric. And if you'd like to see what this will look like when you press log, you can use the F3 test key. Go ahead and do that now. So when I press log, this is how it's going to look when it comes up. You can enter something if you'd like. I'll enter 45. And here is how it'll appear when it's in the new measurements display. Once that prompt is set up, you can say OK, and you'll see it's been added to the list. Now let's go ahead and insert another prompt, and we'll call the next prompt species. So just go to the next user-defined prompt, -102, and you can either say OK or press the Enter key. Let's change the label by pressing Edit, and again, there's that Delete Line button. And this time we'll enter species. I'm not going to enter a description for this one. For the type, I will change this and make sure it's set to a string. The screen width item, when you use a string variable, is how much of the screen in new measurements display do you want to reserve for this particular parameter. If your answer to the question is going to be really long, then you may want to alter how much screen space you're saving for this particular prompt. Now, when you do log a variable, although the entire answer may not be displayed on the display, all of the information that you enter will be recorded in the data file. Okay, so there could be a disconnect between what's appearing on the display and actually what's in your data file. If you'd like to see what this will look like, you can go ahead and say F3 test, and here's the prompt that comes up. And I'll go ahead and enter what my species is, and here you can see how it'll appear on the screen. If that's okay, you can press F5. And another couple of prompts that may be useful would be leaf number. So I'll insert one more, and I'll go to the next user-defined parameter. I will edit the label, and I'll call this leaf number. And it is a numeric variable, so I don't need to modify anything else here. And finally, a couple of other prompts that would be useful for this experiment are leaf area and stomata ratio. And the reason is I'm going to be measuring lots of different species, and I may not always be filling the entire area of the chamber, in which case I want the instrument to prompt me for this, so I remember to look and see, am I in fact filling the leaf area? If I'm not, then this would remind me to go ahead and enter what that area is. Now keep in mind you can always recompute your data. If you don't know that information as you go along, you can always go back and recalculate your data in Excel and modify that. But if you know it as you go along, it will give your on-screen estimates much closer to the true value. And stomata ratio, that's the number of stomates on one side of the leaf versus the other. If you know offhand what that is, you can go ahead and adjust that as necessary. So I will go ahead and insert those two, and you'll notice that they do appear right at the top of the list area, and I'll insert stomata ratio. Okay, now that my list is complete, I will change the name of this prompt list. I'll go up to where it says label, and I'll edit that. And I like to name it what is included in the prompt list. So I'm going to choose transect. And I'm going to enter species. Leaf, area, and stomata ratio. And that way, if I wanted to use this prompt list with a different configuration later on, I simply need to look at the label and I'll know what's included in that prompt list. Okay, once you've saved it, you can go ahead and say OK. And it will ask you if you want these prompts to be added to your display. Go ahead and say yes. And finally, it'll ask you if you want these new prompts to be added to the log list. And we do, so go ahead and say yes. And here it's showing us the new display lines that will be added. If you would like to modify these later on, you certainly can, but for now this is where they're going to be put. Okay, and you'll notice the asterisk that appears next to our prompts, indicating we've made a change to our prompt list. You'll see what we have changed. We've changed whether our prompts on log is set to on or off, and we've also changed what the prompts are that are going to be requested of us. Okay, you can go ahead and contract the prompt list. And we're now ready for the next aspect of the configurations, which is our compute list. So we're going to modify our compute list just to show you how that's done. So if you go up to highlight the compute list and press the F1 key, it will show you what your current compute list is, and the file appears here. And if you expand that, you'll see it shows you what will be in the header, and you can modify that. If you'd rather have, if you'd like to have something else in the header, you can modify that as well. What we're going to do is add an extra computation. So we want to go down to where it says extras and say edit. And we're going to add a new computation. So we're going to press F2. And the computation we're going to add is an expression. We're going to compute something. So you can highlight that and say OK. And then you can give it a short label. We're going to be computing water use efficiency, and we're going to compute that as photosynthesis divided by transpiration. And we're going to compute it as a percentage. So for the short term, you can just call it WUE. And now you can enter a complete description if you like. And again, this only shows up if you use that what's what key. Otherwise, what's displayed in new measurements is going to be the short label, and what's in your data file is going to be the short label. Okay, now we need to decide if we're going to compute this at the beginning of our normal computations or whether we're going to do this at the very end. If your computation includes items that are being computed in the list, then it may be wise to do the computation, your new computation, after the others have already been calculated. And that's what we're going to do. Water use efficiency will use both photosynthesis and transpiration, and those are being computed, so we want to make sure we're using the new values for computing water use efficiency. So we want to do this A after. And here is the default expression that comes up. And we want to get rid of that one. And here, if you press your labels key, you'll see that the bottom row is changing. And what we can do is you can either enter the number of the parameter. So if you happen to know that photosynthesis is number 30, you could just type that in. Or if you knew the variable name, you could type that. For me, I'm going to look it up by pressing the F1 key, and it'll bring up a whole list of all of the variables in the 6400. And if I page down a few, I should run across photosynthesis, and there it is. So simply highlight it, and you can either say F5, OK, or you can press the Enter key. So I'm going to take photosynthesis and I'm going to divide it by transpiration. So again, I will look up the value, number 20, and then I need to do a little bit more math, and I need to do a units change as well as multiply times 100. And that's where I'm coming up with the rest of that computation. Once you have added it, it will bring you in and show you what ID number the instrument is going to give it. This is going to have an ID number of 1000. It'll show you what my label is, what the description is and basically how it's set up. So you can edit any of these if you'd like. If you'd like to see what it will look like, you can press the test button and it will show you using the current values for photosynthesis and transpiration. It will show you what it will look like on screen. Now I don't have a leaf in the chamber and my chamber is currently open, so what's being displayed is a 0 at this point. Alright, when you're back to the edit screen, you can go ahead and say OK. And then it will ask you if you want to log this data, and probably you do, so I would say yes. And then it'll also ask you if you want to add this to the displays, and I would say yes. And finally, you can say OK, and it'll show you that it's adding this parameter to the display, and you can just press any key at this point. All right, so now you can see we have edited our computation list, and we have added a new variable. You can go up to the compute list and contract it. We are finished with that. Now we want to check to make sure that our new prompts and our new computed variable are being set up in the log list. We did go ahead and add them as part of the setup, but just to check, you can use the expand key and go down to where it says items. And if you go ahead and press enter, it will actually show you your log list, and starting from the first item in that list is what will be the first column in your data file. And as you go down the list, you're going to the right. So my very first column is observation, followed by time, and then here's that new computation we made, which is water use efficiency, and so on. Okay, we can go ahead and contract our log list. Another feature that is new and unique for version 6.1 software is this controls option. And if you expand that and expand the defaults, you'll notice these are the controls for new measurements. We can actually change what the default fan setting is. We can change what our default flow rate is. If you know you want CO2 to automatically default to something, you can modify that, as well as temperature and light. So those may be useful if you always use the same settings, to go ahead and modify those so that all of your controls are set appropriately. So as soon as you go into new measurements, everything is set. And we'll do that for this particular experiment. For the ecological survey experiment, it's important that we use as high a flow rate as we possibly can. So I'm going to go ahead and keep flow set to a fixed flow rate, and I'll go ahead and use 500, which is the default flow rate. Now remember, it's best to clamp onto an example leaf and see what sort of relative humidity and delta CO2 and delta H2O you have. If you are not getting, if humidity is either too high or too low, or your delta CO2 or delta H2O values are too low or they really can't be too high, but if they're too low, then it may be necessary to decrease the flow rate. So keep in mind that this is just a starting point, and you may need to adjust this depending on which leaves you're working with. For CO2, we will edit that, and for survey measurements, it's important to control on reference CO2. And the reason is we will be opening and closing our chamber rather frequently. The idea is that if we have all of our controls set appropriately, and we're selecting the right leaves and we're using the right light intensity, we should be able to clamp onto a leaf and wait 30 seconds to a minute for everything to stabilize, log our data point, then open up our chamber, go to the next leaf, and wait for stability and make a measurement on that leaf. So we're really not going to be on our leaves very long. So we really don't want the mixer to need extra time to come to stability after our chamber's been open and closed. And that's why we want to control and reference CO2. So if you highlight reference CO2, go ahead and dial in whatever your ambient conditions are. I'm going to put in 370. So for now, when I go into new measurements, my flow rate's going to automatically be set to 500. My CO2 will be controlling on reference at 370. I am not going to control temperature for this experiment. However, if you're going to be out there all day and your temperature is going to change drastically, then it might be a good idea to control temperature. The last one we will be using is light, so I'll edit that. And I'm going to choose a quantum flux. And since we'll be doing understory leaves, I'll go ahead and start with a quantum flux of 300 micromoles. Now, bear in mind that this will change drastically depending on the experiment you're doing, and it's really important for survey measurements that you use your external quantum sensor and you measure what is the light intensity that this leaf is used to. And if it's not used to the light intensity that you're wanting to work at, then it's probably best to choose a different leaf or to choose a different light level that the leaf is used to, because you don't want to have to wait very long for your leaf to adjust to a change in light level. Remember that the leaves do adjust quicker to a decrease in light than they do to an increase in light. So if you're forced to change your light intensity or to choose a different leaf, it's always better to go to a lower light level than to go ahead and go up to a higher light level. Okay, let's go ahead and contract that controls portion of the configuration. The rest of these we don't need to modify. I think we are pretty much complete with this. What we do want to do is go up and save these changes. So for now, you can say F5 done. And now you'll notice the asterisk back in the configuration menu, and that indicates that we have made a change. And if you escape all the way back to the open screen, you'll notice there's an asterisk that appears there. So if you had made a change and you were not sure why you were getting that warning message, you could follow the asterisks and you can find out which items have been changed. And you can see for us, we've changed a lot of different components of this configuration. Okay, we can save this by going up to Save As. So if you highlight that, then we are being asked for a new file name. And another shortcut that you can use, if you press your down arrow, it will actually bring you down into that box where you can highlight and you can start with one of the names that's already there, or you can go ahead and type in your own name. One other shortcut is if you press your labels key, you'll notice the bottom row changes, and one of the items that's very useful is this delete line. So I'll go ahead and type in my new name. And now if I go up to open, you'll see that this is now one of the options that comes up when I turn on the instrument. In addition to having factory default or O2B light source, this is another option, ecological survey. You can highlight it and it will go ahead and load all the information that we set up. And now you can escape back to the open screen. If you'd like to take a look and test the prompts that we set up, you can go into New Measurements, F4, and you can put the new display lines Up on the display line M has our transect, our species, our leaf number, our leaf area, and line N has the stomatal ratio. If you'd like to test your prompts, you can go to F4 on menu level 3, prompts on log. If you'd like to just test them, go ahead and do a prompt all, F5, and you'll see your questions begin to appear. And go ahead and enter something. And there you'll see all of the answers appear up on our display. Now, if we would have had a log file open and pressed the log button, you would have gotten exactly the same questions that appeared here. And that is a quick tour of setting up your instrument for survey type measurements. Obviously, you can adjust this as you need to, depending on your experimental question and what you need. But in terms of the ecological survey experiment, we are ready to go out and take measurements.